a very warm welcome to this month's Pacecast. I'm Anita Pace. Thank you for joining us. My guest today is an active advocate for the Hull and East Riding area. He's campaigned passionately about devolution, and I'm sure we're going to hear a bit more about that later. But he's also busy as the non-executive chairman of Arco, the UK's leading supplier of safety equipment and workwear. I'm delighted to say that my guest today is, of course, Thomas Martin. Hello, Thomas.
And a very good morning, and thank you so much for the invitation.
You're very welcome. I'm a bit apprehensive about this. I don't know why, but I feel it's going to be energetic and interesting, and I feel like I'm going to learn a lot about you and probably a lot about myself, which is maybe why I'm feeling a little anxious about it.
Well, I've come here today to try and help people with some insights and some information which they wouldn't necessarily have known about me, and if I can add value in the session, then that's the plan.
I'm sure you will. I'm strapped in. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
So you will have brought in something
I have.
that is meaningful to you. I don't know what it is, so I'm looking forward to hearing all about it and why it's important to you. So what have you brought in?
I'm going to produce on my right hand the little piece of wood that you talked about a few seconds ago. So this is a mail shot that came to me in 1998 and that I have treasured ever since. It's from a consultancy, and they were trying to get involved in helping companies develop strategy. I'm afraid I love the mail shot, but I didn't employ them for any strategic work. What this means to me is this is an object. You and I are looking at the same object. You are, in that form, you're looking at a square. I can be looking at a triangle. In that form, you're looking at a circle. I'm looking at a triangle. So we're both looking at the same thing, but we've both got a different perspective on it. And I learnt that lesson from 1998. And ever since then, whether there's been an opportunity or a challenge in business or with people, I've always tried to see what the other perspective is, at least once. And if I really work hard at it, try and get another 2 additional perspectives. So that has been a phenomenal key to unlocking my inquiring mind, which developed far too late. And it allows me to speak with people and to go out and give them a really good listening to, because they've always got the answers.
I love that. How simple but effective. But you didn't give them any work.
I didn't give the agency any work, no, but I suppose I really ought to acknowledge the Arthur D. Little agency from 1998, but that has stayed with me. And it stayed with me until we moved offices from Waverley Street to Blackfriars, and I lost it. And I've had it in my desk the whole time, my entire career. And so I spoke to a professor at Penn University in America, who's one of the global experts in additive manufacturing, a gentleman called Andrew Sink. And I described what the object was, and he actually made me a 3D printed version with all the requisite pieces to go in there. And then I got that from America. I thanked him for it. And then people started talking about it online on LinkedIn, and he's now made hundreds of these sets.
Oh, really?
So we've started something, but it's just designed.
But you found it, though?
I found it again. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, in my deep litter filing system when we finally got Blackfriars sorted out after COVID. Yes, I found it again.
As you have 2.
I now have 2.
Fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing that. So you said that you developed this skill later in life. So let's start it right back to the beginning then. Let's talk about the early days for Thomas Martin. What were you like as a child?
I was a nightmare. And some people would say I probably still am. But quite withdrawn.
Withdrawn, really?
Oh, absolutely. Significantly bullied at school, which was an interesting sort of learning period for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely hated school. Do I use that as a convenient excuse for being lazy at school? Perhaps. But I never really understood learning. I never really got it. And I kind of fought against the system and railed against people who were trying to help me, like my parents.
Oh,
so I was tricky, and I was truculent, and I was sulky, and I was absent from the ages of about 8 to about 24, really preferring to be pretty much anywhere else.
So physically absent, not just mentally absent, you mean?
Yeah, physically absent. So I was away at school from the age of 8, and then I managed to completely ruin all my A levels, which I think is an absolute travesty. So I was, not taking the most of the opportunities that my parents had engineered for me. And I applied to a tech to try and get some tertiary education. By the time I got there, it was a poly. And about 15 years ago, it became a university. So I now could obliquely claim to have a mediocre honours degree from a university. But actually, the learning journey could have been so different.
And what was your degree in, just out of interest?
It was in economics and history.
Right. So you clearly had something about you when you wanted to apply yourself.
But it happened far too late.
Right.
Yeah, far too late.
So as you were growing up then, you didn't enjoy school. Was there something that you wanted to do? Did you dream about doing something?
I remember writing down in a careers fair I wanted to work in business. And I actually spelt business wrong. So I was told by the careers teacher that was not a good start. And they said, why? I said, because I just like innovation. I like creativity. I like to try and make a difference. And I always wanted to work out, would there be a way of learning from people and then being able to perhaps come and have a role in our family business, which by then was certainly over 100 years old by then. So, Was it always the plan that you would go into the family business, or? It was always my plan that if I was going to be good enough, I'd find a way in. And when I finished my degree, actually the day after the final exam, I remember going down to London, and of course this is now sort of 1985, and there's no mobile phones, not even pagers, there's no direct mail or anything like that. So in order to try and get a job, I drafted 6 letters round 6 advertising agencies, and I left them at reception, and I went round 3 days later doing the same circuit and bumps, and the letter was basically asking for an interview. And I got 2 interviews, and by the end of a week after I finished my finals paper, I had a job offer. So I want to talk to you about that, because I was intrigued when I read that you'd started work in advertising. Your degree was in economics, but you decided to pursue an advertising agency route, which in the 80s was, Mad Men territory and big advertising campaigns and a very sexy business. Why? Why advertising? It was cool.
It was cool, yeah.
It was free for all. It was like the Wild West.
Yeah.
And I just thought if somebody hadn't made the most of the opportunities so far, I thought that there was a chance to try and see if I could shape myself on someone else's payroll. And make some mistakes on someone else's salary bill. That was the plan.
You had some job offers. Where did you go then?
I ended up as one of the Saatchi offshoots with direct marketing, based in Covent Garden. So working in a fantastic part of town with some amazing people, and then worked with the start of a telemarketing agency called Direct Line. That again was a full services organisation with clients that not many people would recognise now, such as MFI, so B2C, or British Caledonian, the airlines. So I don't know whether, because I was involved in the campaigns, both those businesses tanked. No, that was a long time ago. Influence. But I mean, that was fantastic. That was straight into dealing with customers, planning campaigns.
What was your role then?
I was account manager.
Right, so it was very much the people side, managing the clients.
It was tremendous.
Yeah.
And then I think I have the record of the largest response to any mail shot in the UK. So we did a piece for MFI, and it was a 7-piece pack. So for
those listeners who don't know what MFI is, it was a furniture retailer.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you, Anita. Beg your pardon. And it was what's called a 7-piece pack. So a piece of direct mail was going to go out to this database of 94,000 people. And this was big news in those days, because you had a window envelope. You all know the window envelope you get with your junk mail these days. 1985, that was very new. So you had the window envelope, and you had a laser printed letter with all the customer contact details on.
Yeah.
Then there was an offer. Then there was a recruiter friend. Then there was a piece about going down to your local store. Then there was some other additional ranges that the company would offer. And then there was this piece about recruiter friend, and finally was a paid card to send this thing off. So I went down to the fulfillment house, the mailing house in Wapping. We signed everything off, put it in the post, and 4 days later we couldn't get into the offices, because all of that direct mail had landed back at our offices.
What, return to sender or responses?
Because the pack, when it was completed, didn't have the laser printed personalised letter through the window.
Oh no!
It had the reply paid coupon. So we got a pretty much 100% response rate.
How funny!
And nobody saw it. So with a very heavy heart, I went down to the print house to go, had I signed off the wrong order. And I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to be carpet bombed here.
Yeah.
And we opened up the safe, and there was the signed envelope. And we opened it up, and I had signed it off in the correct order.
Oh, you had signed it in the correct order?
I had,
So it was their mistake?
It was their mistake.
So you live to fight another day?
Absolutely, survived that one.
So how long were you in the advertising world for then?
I'm going to say that they survived me for 3.5 years. And then a job opportunity was advertised for Arco in the national press. And
you're still in London?
And I was still in London. And I applied, but I was aware of the challenges of nepotism. So I lied on my CV, not in terms of what I'd done. I was entirely clear about some mediocre academic achievements. I talked about my campaigns and the success I'd had with those, but I applied under a false name.
Really?
And
so just sorry to interrupt you, but who was running Arco at that time?
So at the time, the company was in its third generation with my father and my uncle at the helm.
Right.
They were joint managing directors. Dad had been in place since the late 50s. Stephen had come in the 60s. And they were beginning to reshape the company. The company's reinvented itself probably 4 or 5 times in its 140 years. I mean, not many people know that we started out making tennis balls for the little-known tournament at Wimbledon. That was it.
Yeah.
So that was in the Leyland and Birmingham company days. Great-grandfather came down from Scotland to sort out this unruly branch in Hull for Leyland and Birmingham. He said he'd only make the move if they gave him some shares. So he arrived on the scene in 1907, started to get some shares. His son, my grandfather, also a Thomas, he then came into the business in the 30s, and they started to move into the industrial plastics, floors, suspended ceilings, raised floors. And they did a great deal with the Goodyear tyre company to buy a load of their factory surplus. And then the deal was done, the paperwork was signed, and we were going to take all our own machinery and all their existing stock and ship it across from America. And then the new factory they were building burnt down, so they wanted it back. So they got it back, but they got it back at a premium. And that then allowed us to move out from our rather mediocre offices into slightly larger premises. And that really was the start. It gave grandfather the funds to start buying in shares. So I am now 4th generation.
Wow. We could spend hours just talking about the history of Arco. So, right, back to you. So you applied for the job anonymously. Well, not anonymously.
Well, I applied for the job, and it was quite interesting. I just said to my parents I wanted to come home for the weekend. So that was a bit of a shock to them. You know, what's he doing coming home? He's finally grown up. He finally wants to engage. Great. You know, good on them. They said they'd see me. So I turned up in Hull, and I went into Waverley Street. Father goes, I'm glad to see you. Yes, I got busy with an interview from London. I think it might be somebody from your agency. So really? Yeah, he's done some fantastic work on some financial stuff for Commercial Union. He's done some great work with, a couple of airlines. He's going to be brilliant. You might know him. I said, who is it? I said, Paul Jackson. Oh, Jacko, he's a complete star. I then left the room, came back in, and he said, what are you doing? I'm interviewing Paul Jackson. I said, Dad, I'm Paul Jackson. This is me. I've come for the job.
I've got goosebumps. What did he say?
I think he was underwhelmed to begin with. He needed to make sure that I was serious.
All right.
He needed to make sure that I understood the commitment that it would be, and that if I was coming in as a family member, then that I really had to go for it. And I joined 3 weeks later, and I went for it. What a wild ride it's been.
And what was your first role with Arco then?
I was an assistant to the product managers, and I loved it. I was learning about the products. I was getting involved in some of the marketing services. I set up a telesales division to contact our customers, and were the first people in the UK to get NVQs on that. And that was a really exciting time in the business. I had the L plates on, and I was being thrown every sort of challenge, every exposure right around the business, and I loved it. Absolutely.
And how old were you about this time?
I was 24.
Right. And what was the relationship like with your colleagues then, as the son of the leader of the organisation? Were you treated any differently?
I think to be fair, you'd say that they were initially wary, and then I'd given them every reason to trust me. So whatever happened, whatever I got wrong, there was never any blame culture. There was never any talking behind backs. What stayed at work, it was at work, and didn't get transgressed to the dinner table at home. And very quickly, we were then on the front foot, and we were just rewriting the rules for the safety industry, and it was a really exciting time.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the relationship like with your dad? A working relationship?
Fabulous.
You always got on?
No working relationship at all, because there was the rule, member of the family couldn't report to a member of the family.
Yeah.
So I was then living at home for about 6 months, which was a phenomenal period for me, because I finally allowed my parents into my life.
Right.
And I'm so glad I did. That was just an absolute joy to have that experience at 24. And that was probably the making of me. So I realised to just calm down, let other people in, stop trying to take on the world, share things, talk about things, listen to some advice. And
had you had a difficult relationship with your parents up to that point?
I'd probably rebuffed an awful lot of the love that they were cherishing on me. So I just think I was tricky. So I would say it's no fault of theirs.
Why do you think?
Because I was just aloof. I thought I knew best. And it was as simple as that. Ignorant teenager who then sulked his way down to London and loved it. There was more going on there than there was up here then.
Yeah. Okay, so you've obviously had a very successful career at Arco and worked your way up through the ranks. Anything you want to share with us about your time at Arco that stands out for you? Any highlights, or indeed any times where you think actually that wasn't particularly good?
There's a whole series in what I've learned. So I would say some of the best bits have been the ability to select and develop some absolutely outstanding talent, where we did incredible things. So we had new brand architectures. We rewrote the rules in terms of pricing positions. We rewrote the rules in terms of ranges. I remember launching the first colour-coded catalogue back in 1989, the first price catalogue for the industry. And we really began then to boss the sector. And we hadn't really got into safety until 1968, when one of the directors, Vince Gibbons, he was brought in to try and see if there was anything to do with his safety division. And when Vince retired in 93, I was given the chance to run the safety division, which was then the smallest division of Arco. It's now the only division that we've got, really. We have safety products, yes, we have safety services, and we have a hose division, which takes us back to our industrial heritage. But safety is now all we do. And that was a fantastic journey for me, with my fingerprints all over it and working with some incredibly talented people. And my rule was I had 8 different leadership positions in that safety division. I would always recruit talent that was better than me. And I was demonstrating to the organisation that it was all right to have pressure from below, and it was not a problem. It actually allowed you to do your job, and it freed you up to go and expand your own horizons. So from having rejected education and expansion, personal growth in the early years, it was in a feeding frenzy when I came to Hull. And I think that says an awful lot about the culture that my father and my uncle had instilled. They'd had some really good people, and I wanted feeding, and they fed me. And look at the result. It's great.
Yeah. So when did you, I was going to say step away, but have you stepped away really?
Oh yeah,
you have.
I've stopped interfering.
Honestly?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
So in terms of stepping away, you've really got to let the team get on with it, and it was a very brave decision by the family to recruit a chief executive officer in Guy Bruce, who is not from our sector, who is a transformation specialist, and not only to recruit Guy, but to give him permission to play. And it was something which I've always been keen on in allowing people. I think Guy calls it freedom within a framework. And he had permission to review the strategy. He had permission to review the talent pool. He had permission to bring in his execs. Now his executive team now are doing things that I couldn't do, which I think is just amazing. And I watch them, and I just want to feed them, give them oxygen, and let them grow. But in terms of how that works in a culture, we've always had a culture of trust or no blame. And I think one of the great things I had when I was MD, a joint MD with my late cousin Joe, was one of the category managers came in and he was looking completely ashen. And he said, I'll pay you back. And here we go. What's he done? So close the door, have a brew, sit down, tell me all about it. Well, what have you done? I bought some gloves. Right. How many have you bought? About a million. I said, I beg your pardon? That sounded like about $1 million. Yep, he was nodding at me. I said, how many have you bought? Yeah, 1,471,000 pairs of gloves. I said, well, technically that's about 1.5 million, not about $1 million. And what's the problem with them? Well, we can't sell them. Okay. Why not? Well, they're not CE marked.
They're not what, sir?
They're not CE marked. They're not category approved for distribution in the UK. They don't offer protection to the worker. Oh. Right then. So you bought them because they're a price point. Yeah. You thought you'd corner the market. Absolutely. And we can't sell them. I said, no. I said, right, you're not going to pay me back, but you are going to come up with a plan within a week to tell me how you're going to turn that into some sort of cash. Okay. Thanks. Off he goes. He was back in 4 days later with a spring in his step, and I knew he'd cracked it. I said, so what have we got then? Well, I've got good news and I've got great news. Okay. He said, I've shifted all the gloves. Just like, what do you mean I've sold them? You've sold them already? Yeah. Decent margin. Well, I thought you said we couldn't sell them. We can't sell them to protect people, but we can sell them to protect product. He'd sold them to the now defunct Bernard Matthews chicken organisation, and that was to protect the product on the production line, not the workforce.
Clever.
And then I said, and the great news is I need another 7 million. And that product, born through a lack of blame culture and a fundamental cultural approach on trust, became our best-selling line. And I'll say it carefully, the Arco Chicken Plucker Special was the best-selling in our range for about 5 years.
And that guy, where did he end? Did he
had a great career.
Yeah, I bet.
And he ended up retiring. He actually retired a little bit early. He said, right, I've done it. I'm going out on a high. Yeah. Fair play.
Great story. Story.
So there's a whole load of things that I've got right, a whole load of things that I've got wrong, and there's a whole load of what I would say are corporate lessons. So one of the big challenges I had was it took me far too long to actually work out what I was all about. You've talked a bit about the education piece and then finally discovering this thirst for learning. And came to 2007 and I went out to France, to INSEAD, to do an accelerated MBA. That was pretty strenuous. It was a course.
How long was that? Was it a year?
No. We did it in 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
6 weeks. It was a deeply immersive course with 54 global chief execs attending a program. And we had absolutely no spare time in the entire program apart from one Saturday morning. And I was the only person in a family business attending on this course. Everyone else was from global PLCs. So I said to the course tutor, I said, look, I'd like to do a piece about why family businesses are different from PLCs. We're wired differently. We think differently. For us, the short to medium term could be 15 years. In a PLC, it's a matter of weeks. So I'd like to do something like that. But he said there's no time. So we had a dinner in the Bois de Boulogne, this professor called Ludo van der Heyden. And at that dinner, we worked out this was about a 3-hour session. And he led it, and I did my piece. And we offered it. Said, we've only got 1 half day free, but Thomas wants to do this. You're very welcome to come along, but it's not compulsory. You're not going to get marked on it. It's not no part of any module. Everybody turned up. So I thought, oh, this better be good.
How many were on it, did you say?
54.
54.
So they all gave up the only free time they had. And at the end of it all, he said, I'd like you to do a 10-minute piece about the company. So, okay, I'll take that. We might get some business out of this. So I did a 10-minute corporate advert, and the head of China Telecom was there. And he said something which just absolutely went through me like a thunderbolt. He said 22 words which completely changed my life. And I know what time it was said. It was said at 12:48 on Saturday, the 23rd of June, 2007. And his words were, because of what you do, people go back to their families at the end of the working day. And he added this little piece of magic. He added, what an honourable profession. Bang. I had it. I had the basis of a strategy, a campaign, a corporate purpose that I could educate everyone on. And it was incredibly powerful. And
I can see it means a lot to you as well.
Yeah, superb.
Yeah.
And we managed to align the whole organisation with a 15-year strategy as to how we were going to really drive expertise, quality, And it's that which has driven a lot of the work we do with the legislation, working with both sides of both houses at Westminster to making sure that the regs are appropriate and fit for purpose. That's why we comment on the activity of the Health and Safety Executive. That's why I lobby for right funding for the Office of Product and Safety Standards, where I'm really getting in people's grills to say that the UK has the world's best reputation for health and safety, and it's not going to be diluted on my watch, and I can go down and I can poke people in the eye. That was the moment which then crystallised, because previously people would say, what do you do? I say, I work in health and safety. They go, I'm sorry? I said, no, I work in health and safety. They go, no, I heard it the first time, I'm just sorry. I thought, I have got to rebrand that and recalibrate that. And that then led to some phenomenal campaigns, SARS, Ebola, COVID, getting involved to comment on the COVID inquiry, and really leaning in to help shape the future of not just our future, but actually the future of the safety sector in the UK. And that's something I'm really proud of. That was a great move.
Yeah. I love how you've turned, your colleague, did you say it was China? From China, yeah. How, I mean, not even his first language, but he understood the emotive strength of it and turned it from what is, let's say, a routine service, health and safety, into something that actually means something to the individual.
Something you can really hang on to. Yeah. So actually, I've got another prop, just as a little bit of a demonstration. In order to align the organisation, we actually managed to get our purpose, our values, and our strategy, and our corporate and personal journeys for everybody onto the back of a phone case, and that was a phenomenal. Little sort of prop to help us really accelerate sales. If you can articulate
it in such a simple way, then you know you've nailed it.
Yeah, we really boiled it down.
Yeah, it was very good. Obviously an old phone, it's the size of it.
No, that fits my current phone.
Oh, you want it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You don't need the big text like me.
No. So I suppose the only regret on that would be it took me so long to really discover the thing that actually got me passionate and really excited. I love developing products. I love innovation. I like trying to make a difference. But that was something that aligned 1,500 people, got them all going in the same direction. And then suddenly the magic began to happen. My only regret is if I'd maybe worked a bit harder in my teens, I might have been aware of that. But certainly going back to education, and I was in my 30s, that was phenomenal to allow me to then just expand again. And off we went.
Yeah.
And then that led to things happening outside of Arco.
Yeah. Let's talk about that then, life outside Arco. There's so much you could talk about. Where do you want to start?
I realised that having had a career which had taken me literally all over the world, trying to understand, trying to see what other people were doing, learning from the best. I realised that there were more things going on, and then trying to recruit a team, something amazing happened because I was being inundated with CVs, and if you get 150 CVs, that can be a day and a half to go through, and I would scan that pile, and somebody would have on their CV, and they might have spent decades building up that personal profile. And I would scan it in about 20 seconds. And I was picking out of 150, I was picking out 3 people to go through for interview. But I'd never recruit on my own because I'd always miss the 4th. So working with a personnel director or an HR director these days, or a talent manager, they would pick the 3 which I'd done through their own hard graft research, but they'd also add maybe a 4th candidate. But my 3 were always in there. And I couldn't work out what it was that was going on. So I started to study it. And I started to ask questions with contacts I'd had from presentations at Cambridge and at Oxford, and working with someone at London University, because I've got a really good outside network. And we worked out that there was something special that was going on. And what I wanted to do was to try and help people understand how the whole careers, CV, job selection piece is a load of baloney. And if you'll allow me, I'd just like to demonstrate that to you with a quick 30-second exercise.
Oh dear. All
right.
Here we go.
So, with your permission, I'm not trying to turn the tables for any other effect, but to try and help educate people.
Okay.
I invented this about 25 years ago.
Okay.
Now, you're running a fantastic company.
Thank you. I feel like you're...
No, I'm not the big builder. But you've decided you're going to go and have a 6-month break.
Yes, please.
And so, why not? So you're going to go and sail around the world. My choice of transport might not be your first choice of transport. I don't know, but you're going to go on a boat.
Okay, all right.
So you're going to be away for 6 months, and you're very practical as well. And you realise that something might happen. There might be a breakdown. You might end up playing Robinson Crusoe for a bit.
Yeah. Right, okay,
God. So you're going to have to plan on maybe being away for longer than 6 months, maybe 6, 9 months, maybe maximum 12 months. Story has a happy ending. You do come back and the business is thriving. But the business is only thriving because you have got the right person to do your role in your absence.
Right.
So you're thinking about the kind of person you want to put in there. So what would you have? What would you say that person has to have about them? Do your job, and the better person you choose, the more successful Pace Comms will be when you get back.
Energy.
Yeah.
Personable.
Yeah. Relatable. Yeah.
Yeah. Commercial. How many?
You keep going. You keep going.
Okay.
Yes, 4-0 so far. It's great. Doing really well.
Thank you. Committed / passionate, someone who cares. Right. Caring, I guess. As in caring about doing the right thing for the people and the business.
So the right way to approach things. Yeah. My moral standards. Yeah.
Yeah. Experience, and I don't mean necessarily experience of like years and years of experience of doing something similar. It's more about experience of either running an organisation and managing people.
Okay.
And a sense of pace, excuse the pun, but
no pace, that's great.
We're in a very dynamic industry and things are changing all the time. Yeah. So you need to be agile, make decisions quickly, and I guess not be frightened of failure. Try things. Oh, wow,
that's a great one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
This person probably doesn't exist. That's why I've not had 6 months
10-3. 10-3 is your score. 10-3 is your score. Now, what does that mean?
Good?
What does that mean? That's outstanding. What does that mean for the casual listener?
Okay.
So there are 3 lessons to learn from this game, and thank you so much for trusting me to play the game. Firstly, you have scored more attitudinal things in the person who would run your business than you have skill sets.
Yes, I agree with that.
You've got 10 attitudinals.
Yeah.
You got
because attitude trumps skill.
So in your case, it's 10-3.
Yeah.
Every single time I played this game over 25 years, there is more attitude than skills.
Oh, okay.
And what do we get taught in schools?
Skills. Yeah.
Now, in the commercial world, you don't get paid for what you know.
Yeah.
You and I get paid for what we do with what you know.
Yeah. Oh, God, I've got goosebumps again.
So the final lesson you learn from this, if you are ever in a pressure situation and you need to try and find out about somebody you're about to do a deal with, find a way to play a version of that game. Because a complete stranger, when you play that game with them, a complete stranger will always describe themselves. So that is you.
Yeah. But it's so hard. What you said earlier about the interviewing process, it is a shambles for recruitment because it gives you a snapshot of a person. You don't really get to know a person until you work with them and work with them over a period of time. It's not just a few weeks, it's over a period of time. How do you test people's suitability to join your business to work with when you've only got these? And we try different mechanisms. So you do interviews, you try interviewing with a team as opposed to just one person. You might ask them to do a video, you might ask them to do a scenario, you might ask them to present to you. These are all different tactics, but ultimately you could still employ a dud. And we waste so much time and money recruiting
and
people.
People throughout their school career spend so much time producing the wrong CVs. So what you do is you turn up what's called your limbic brain. Ever heard of that?
My limbic brain.
Your limbic brain.
Go on.
So you've got 2 parts of your brain. You've got your neocortex, which is all the conscious stuff, and the quick down and dirty classes. Your limbic brain is like a big warehouse. It stores everything you've got, everything you've done, spoken, heard, touched, felt, smelt, tasted. Everything in your entire life goes into this big data repository. But for whatever reason, there is no neural pathway to communicate access from that warehouse into your day-to-day life. other than gut feel.
Gut, yeah. Trust your gut.
Yeah.
And
So now this is bizarre. So in an interview like that, you should be really thinking about fit for the organisation, the culture, the colleagues you've got, the colleagues that you are really working well with. It's all about fit. But the sneaky stuff comes is when you write a CV designed to appeal to the reader's limbic brain. So when I was scanning all those CVs in 20 seconds, had the person painted enough of a picture about themselves where subconsciously my gut could say, I think they could fit, and I'm really interested in seeing them. If I was to ask you, what's the point of a CV?
Yeah, well, CVs are...
Well, what's the point of it? Why would somebody submit a CV?
It's an actual question.
Is it? I beg your pardon.
okay.
Sorry, just not a trick question.
Yeah, I guess it's a way of summarising their experience.
Yeah, to what aim?
To try and impress you, to say I'm the best candidate.
To do what?
To get a job.
No. It's the great lie. The whole purpose of a CV is not to get a job.
To get an interview?
It's to get an interview.
Yeah.
And when you go into that interview, you're completely fresh. You've got to have ways of controlling the interview. So I've taken locally about 7 or 8 people who have not had success in careers. I've never had a day out of work, as I'm really very fortunate. But people have struggled getting jobs, and I work with students, young students. If it's someone's under 18, I always work with a parent as well. I've worked with people who are approaching retirement age and want to know what to do next. And I help construct their story in terms of how it will appeal to the limbic brain. And I then teach them how to control an interview. I can teach them how to control the first interview. I can then teach them, and the aim of a first interview is to...
Get a second interview.
Correct. It's not to get the job, it's to get the second interview. I can then teach them how to control the second interview, and they get jobs.
Yeah.
And it's 100% success rate. The one I was most amazed with was working with the British rowing team, who, when the Olympics were delayed, a number of the crew weren't going to be in the delayed 2021 Tokyo final. And they'd been committing life since they were 16 to pulling a blade through the water as hard as they possibly could. Funded by the National Lottery, didn't have to work, just had to train, eat, and just get their performance to an elite level. When they're not in the crew, they're suddenly on the job market with no job experience. So I was teaching them some of the skills that they've got, and they didn't know what they had. So I would say, you've got resilience, you understand commitment, you understand personal discipline. These are fantastic traits for business. You understand working with colleagues. You understand your personal responsibility to be the best you can for the crew's benefit. And I said, you understand strategy. I said, what are you talking about? I said, what did it say on the training room when we started these conversations? It said 947 outings to the final of the men's eights at Tokyo. You were thinking about this 3.5, 4 years out. How many people think beyond next Tuesday? And I said, you're pretty good at tactics. I said, now you're losing me now. I said, a side-by-side 6-lane racing, how well does that go? Well, it doesn't always go to plan. So what do? We've got plan B. All right. Does that work? No, we've got plan C. So you can adapt as well. And suddenly they realised they had some phenomenal attributes, attitudes from the game we played a few minutes ago. Didn't necessarily have the skills, but they could bring all that attitude. So
I've got a question for you then. I agree with everything you've said, but in the days we're in now with AI, how do you see through? Because you probably don't get the CVs now, but those of us who do get CVs, which have been, let's say, helped with AI, you've still got to be able to see through that to get to the person. Similarly with interviews, people can almost perform in an interview if they've prepared well enough. So you've still got to see through that as well to see the real person. So to get them across your front door, I suppose the quickest tip I could give you is, could you imagine being in the pub with them for a couple of hours having a chat? Yeah. And I've tried that tactic as well. Okay. going for a drink with us. And when they're in the interview, is seeing how well they control the conversation, how well are they going to be a passenger? Are they going to be somebody you have to drag through the door, or are you going to have to pull them off the ceiling? And really look for that fit. Really test them. But test them on the attitudinal stuff. Because if they're going to work for you, if you're going to trust them with a salary, you've got to think about, what are they going to do
to earn your trust and that financial reward. What are they actually going to do? It's not about skills. What are they going to do with that knowledge? How are they going to apply it?
Yeah, I do agree with all that. And the gut thing is
very powerful.
It's served me well.
It's very powerful.
And when I have gone against it, I've paid a price.
Yeah, well, it happens.
And it does happen. It does happen. Thank you for doing that. I quite enjoyed that. Thank you. Right, let's move on. So other things outside of Arco. Let's talk about you were High Sheriff for a while. Did you enjoy that?
No, that's a phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. I'm not so sure my wife was equally chuffed to have her husband walking around the county in tights and frills, but there we go. Less said about that, the better. Now that's a really honourable position where you are the second person in the county representing either the late Queen or the current High Sheriff, who represented the King. The only person above you in the county pecking order is the Lord Lieutenant. So you work really hard at coordinating civil duties and your royal visits. So that's a real insight into a world. Everyone thinks, it's all about dressing up and parties. No. What it is, it's a year where you dedicate your life to try and making a difference, and you get helicoptered in to shine a spotlight on charities that need a bit of momentum, bit of energy, maybe a bit of cash, and you try and understand what their needs are, and with your own experience network, try and create some dots that you see from a bit of piece of knowledge over there. They've got a particular need here. So you establish those dots and then you join them up. And the year I had, it was humbling. And I said at the end of my year, and this was in 2016, there is absolutely no way that the UK would exist without these unsung heroes, the length and breadth of this country. The work they are doing is phenomenal. And
it's unpaid, isn't it? You're doing it.
Oh, I know. Well, you're shelling out. You're trying to make a difference. You're not trying to spend your kids' inheritance. So it's I remember you try and have a campaign for your year, and some people have done child sexual exploitation, some people have done early intervention. Mine was to try and work with the chief constable at the time to get a more visible police force and to dig into some of the causes of crime, some of the estates, trying to give some of the young school leavers or school children or students some meaningful, some purpose to what they were doing. So I went to the Police and Crime Commissioner, Keith Hunter. I said, Keith, I'd like to set up the cadets working with the chief constable. I said, if I fund one, will you fund one? He went, yeah, of course. Yeah, from the Proceeds of Crime Fund. Yeah, I'll do that, no problem at all. So we've agreed one-to-one funding. He said, absolutely. I went out and I got enough funding for 60. So he had to do one-to-one funding. Mm-hmm. So we started off with 120 cadets. Now that instantly moved the dial. And I believe at its peak, the cadets were about 170, 180 strong. And I'm really proud of that because it gives people a purpose. It raises the profile of the policing and it just kind of pushes the crime away to other areas. Yeah. Great. And some phenomenal people. It was lovely. It was great work.
And were you still working at Arco then, or had you stepped away?
No, I literally just stepped away from an exec role.
Right,
and,
okay. So you had the time.
I made the time.
Right.
Yeah, I made the time.
Yeah, okay. We can't let you go today without talking about devolution, because I've sat in a room with you many times in the run-up to us getting the deal. And I can honestly say I've never known anyone as passionate and as driven and committed to getting the deal for this area than you. So I know I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of other businesses. So thank you for everything you did getting it across the line, working with Councillor Ross and Councillor Handley. Talk to me about what devolution means to you.
For me, it means our region, which is encapsulated on a number of sides by water, suddenly being on the map, and on the map for the right reasons. Not being on the butt of the jokes or the bottom of the league tables for attainment or for housing or for wealth creation. It's actually saying, we're here, we have a place, we deserve a place at the table, we want a future, we're going to create and grab a future. But I've been on the devolution journey for 7 years, and you mentioned the two current local authority leaders. I've actually worked with 7 in my time. I've worked with any number of ministers and secretaries of state who say they're going to do the levelling up, and the devolution ministers, probably about 9 of those. Mercifully, I've had to work with fewer chief execs. There's been much more stability at the executive level within the local authorities, and I've had to fight the local MPs of every single party right the way through. And it all started in about 2013 when we were pushing hard for the City of Culture. Massive room in the Guildhall, and I was sitting on Steve Brady's right, and he went round the table, and I thought he was going to start with me. I thought I've got a really good line as to why we should go for City of Culture, why we should put Hull on the map. And he started on his left side. I thought, so by the time it came round, 42 people
42
had made their comments. He said, come on then, what do you think? I said, well, Steve, it's simple. We were extensively remodelled during 1939 to 1945, and the city was destroyed, but we're still here. We allowed others to take a march on us with the advent of the 40-foot container, and roll-on, roll-off facilities were developed quicker elsewhere, but we're still here. And then we were sold down the river, literally, with the Cod Wars, and the world's largest deep water fishing fleet was taken apart from St Andrew's Dock. But we are still here. We're resilient. We've survived for a reason. Let's go for this. And when that was announced, I thought, my God, we can make a difference here. So I then started to read about devolution, and I was frankly gobsmacked that although being in business, I genuinely don't care what colour of rosette the mayor has. I knew we needed a mayor to start and stand up and fight for us. And it came to a breakthrough in January 22 when I decided to host a dinner in the Churchill Room in the House of Commons. And I had to get somebody who would agree to sort of facilitate the event, and that was Baroness Bottomley. And you can't invite Labour and Tory MPs from both sides of the river. That's when we had an estuary deal was being worked up. You can't invite them to listen to a Tory baroness. So the Chancellor of Hull's University invites you too, and that's because that was the role role she had. And people around the table, for the very first time, I couldn't believe that the MPs and the local authority leaders and the chief execs hadn't been around the same table. And it was scary. I'd sat them deliberately next to somebody from the opposing party. So I was deliberately trying to stir it up. And Baroness Bottom was looking at her watch saying, I can't be associated with this. This is a train wreck. I said, give me till after the soup. So we had the soup. The ammunition was removed. And I remember calling everybody to order. And I said, listen to the conversation so far.
And was there tension up to that point?
Oh, there was bordering on violence.
Really?
There was a lot of raised voices.
Bread buns being thrown across the table.
There was not quite, but there was a lot of angst, and people were getting their positions in very early. I called everybody to order, and I said, well, it's nice to see we are so clearly and closely aligned. Well, it went up like a balloon. When it calmed down again, so before you think I've been on the sauce for the last 3 hours, it's very clear that none of us, not a single one of us around this table, is happy with where we currently are. Therefore, we all want to be somewhere else. So let's go somewhere else together. And we did.
Well, thank you. Thank you for standing up and saying it, because without you behind it, I don't know if we'd have had well, I don't know if we'd got to where we are today. So
bless you. Well, there were some little things along the way, such as in the Guildhall.
A few hurdles.
In the Guildhall, the cabinet, devolution isn't in the Liberal Dem manifesto. So Sir Ed comes up to Hull. I ask a question. He gives an answer. Suddenly it's all right for Mike Ross to play, and Mike gets the majority through, and it proceeds from there. Other little snippets. So I was over in Manchester at the Northern Powerhouse Conference, and I was with Councillor Handley, and we heard the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announce then and there that there was going to be no HS2 to Manchester. And I was in the room. There was Councillor Handley, Henry Murchison for the Northern Powerhouse, there was myself, and then there was Andy Burnham, who was the mayor over there. Well, I had to stop him from running out the door. Sat down with Andy, and I got some really good insights as to what we had to do to get our devolution thing going. Tried again, and then it was summer of 23, and I was going to give up, and I went up to Ben Houchin in Teesside, and he gave me 20... He
was the mayor up there.
He was the mayor, thank you. And he gave me 20 minutes of his time. We ended up with a 45-minute conversation, and I said, why are you sharing all this information? It's very good of you. He said, well, I'm taking your jobs, I'm taking your futures, I'm taking investment from our business cases are a fraction of yours. And he said, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the wrong thing to say to me. And we got it through.
You up.
And the council meeting was this week. The first combined authority board meeting was this week, and I was there. It was in the same room, almost 2 years to the day, where we signed the intent, and that was a fantastic moment. And it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So get out and vote.
Get out. So May the 1st. It's a big day.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
Thank you, Thomas, and thanks again for everything you've done around devolution. I was going to ask you if there's anything you would, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, anything you would change, and by all means answer the question, but I'm going to guess that you might say something around learning and appreciating the value of learning. You discovered it a bit later than you perhaps would have liked to. Is that right?
I would say be inquisitive. Don't just be fed. Don't just be fed what's happening. We're living through the fourth industrial revolution. Change is happening so quickly, so you've just got to keep up. If change is happening in the real world quick and it's happening in your business, you're going to get left behind. If you're a member of a team or if you're leading a company, just keep on learning, keep on pushing, because standing still ain't going to cut it. You're just going to be history. I was asked to, what is the one lesson I could give people in a business context about what to do? And my answer was Frank Sinatra. And they went, what the heck are you talking about? I said, I'll do a session on Frank Sinatra. So
You're going to burst into something now.
I went into the business day, and it was the lunch slot. So the slot after lunch, horrendous. 110 people come into the room, and there's me trying to G people up. So it was titled something like "The Big Lesson to Be Successful in Business." So everyone piled in. And I said, I'm going to sing.
No, you are.
I'm going to sing a word, and I'll only sing the second word if you sing the first word back to me. So I sang "do," and no one replied. So I said, right, you don't know what the second word is then? I said, if I try it again. So I sang it again, and it came back. So I sang the second word to unlock the secret. And the second word is be. And then, of course, you work out that I was trying to quote, Frank Sinatra's "doobie doobie do." And the really simple lesson, do what you say you're going to do. Keep your promises. And be the person you want to be. The world's your oyster.
Oh, we could leave it there on that point, but actually I do want to ask you some more questions.
Go for it.
What keeps you awake at night?
That's a great question. Lots of things. I'm hardwired to serve, and I don't know why that is. And I'm thinking that after maybe 35 years of what I would call extracurricular volunteering, I've probably done more than my fair share. So what keeps me awake is the ability to say no to invitations.
Okay, interesting.
And to be able to say no without guilt. So I have got to do that. I'm lucky enough to have had a fantastic career.
Do you get asked to do a lot?
Yeah. Well, diary's crazy. And actually what I want to do with the next phase is enjoy seeing what Guy and the executive team do at Arco. Enjoy my various board roles in FEO and on a board in London as well. Enjoy seeing the devolution thing going forward, but then actually become a better grandfather, more time for Louise, my long-suffering wife, and then learn to say no without feeling guilty. And then I think I'll sleep better at night. But at the moment I can't. I'm just hardwired to do it.
You're just a busy mind, busy man. What if you could change one thing about yourself? What would it be?
Embrace learning earlier.
Oh, it was, yeah.
And stop fighting. And stop fighting people. Yeah.
Stop fighting people. What do you mean?
Well, I want to stop fighting people. Well, my parents in particular, who were trying to give me the best possible opportunity.
Yeah. You're less. You don't fight so much these days.
Not at all. No. Very fortunate.
I think we're going to wrap it up there, actually, because you've shared a lot with us today, Thomas. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I can see it's been emotional at times. You've certainly opened up. I've learned a lot more about you, and that's what this podcast is all about. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And I know how busy you are. So thank you for finding the time to come and spend it with us this Friday morning. Thank you.
Anita, thank you for the invitation. I hope I've engineered a bit of value.
You have.
And I've shared stuff I haven't shared with anybody else.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I'm not going to let you go just yet because I do have a question here. Every time our guest is here, we ask them to leave a question for the next guest without knowing who it is. So the last guest left a question for you without knowing it was going to be you. And I think it's right up your street, actually, looking at the question. I think you'll answer this quite easily because I'm sure you've got lots to say. What makes a great leader?
A great listener. Somebody who will create an environment where people can feel they got permission to play. They got permission to do things. There's no blame culture. And they are doing stuff because they feel they want to do it, not because they're being told to do it. A great leader creates an environment where the magic happens and 1 + 1 = about 4 or 5. And for me, that's one of the great tragedies of the COVID, not just the COVID pandemic, but the approach to work since then. If you're just out on your career, how are you going to get exposed to leadership? How are you going to get exposed to other talents, other experiences if you're largely sat at home, tapping away on a screen? You can be productive for a certain amount of time, but you're never going to grow. And that worries me.
It does. Worries me too. Yes, I'm not an advocate of it. So
great leaders need to get people back to work, not because
back to the office, you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for answering that. I look forward to hearing what your question's going to be for our next guest. Thanks again, Thomas. I've enjoyed it. Right, that's it for this month. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again next month. And until then, bye-bye.